Welcome back to Sawtooth Tactical. In this video, we're going to talk about the right way and the wrong way to set up an AR15. And there is a right way to do this. And the only reason that I know what the right way is now is because I've made all of the mistakes. On this gun that's right behind me here, that was my first AR ever, and I literally made all the mistakes. Being a new gun owner at the time, I tried lots of different things, some of which worked, most of which didn't work, and I spent a lot of money on parts that I don't use anymore and will never use again. On my newest rifle build, every single part that I put into it are the parts that are going to stay on it. And so that's why I want to bring you guys this video, whether you are new to ARs and are trying to set up your first one. I mean, I remember looking for videos like this when I first got into this, and there's a lot of bad ones out there. Or if you have been doing this for a while, maybe just confirm that you know what you're doing. If you like that, make sure you're subscribed, and let's talk rifle setup. The great thing about the AR-15 is how modular it is. You can literally make it whatever you want, even starting from a very basic rifle like this Smith & Wesson M&P 15 Sport 2. It's one of the most basic ARs you can get, and you can make it into exactly what you want it to be. But you might be tempted to make some of the same mistakes that I did. When I first picked up the rifle, I remember there was a guy in the gun store, and he was like, yeah, you're picking a good rifle. He's like, next thing you're going to want to do is change out the handguard. And he showed me a Daniel Defense RIS-2 quad rail. But that was a very expensive handguard, at least I thought so at the time. And he's like, yep, what you're going to want to do is just customize the hell out of this thing. And I didn't know it yet, but he was right about that. And as soon as I started looking into the options, and especially not knowing any better at the time, I spent a bunch of money on things that were absolutely stupid that I don't use anymore. And so I want to save you guys from making some of those same mistakes. Now, I also want to just make a little disclaimer here that everything that I say in this video is my own personal opinion. But it is an opinion that I've formed from trial and error and from learning the right way to do things. So one of the great things about the market these days is that a lot of rifles now will come with like full-length handguards, decent furniture on them, stuff like that. But a lot of them, you know, say you get, like I said, like an M&P Sport 2 or just any other basic rifle, it's going to come with like your very standard furniture, like these plastic clamshell handguards, an A2 grip, you know, mil-spec charging handle, things like this. And most of them are not going to come with sights of any kind. Maybe some flip-up irons, probably not an optic. And so the very first thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to get an optic, or at least iron sights, but probably an optic. You need to be able to see what you're shooting at, to be able to aim the rifle. And there are many right ways to do optics, but there are also wrong ways. And I do recommend doing some research first and figuring out what purpose your rifle is going to be for. Like on my 16-inch rifle here, I have a 1:6 LPVO with an offset red dot. That's my rifle that if I'm going to reach out and touch something at a farther distance, that's why I have the, 6-power LPVO on it to reach out to those distances. Magnified optics are great for that. On my 14.5-inch here, I've got an EoTech with a flip-up magnifier, but that's only 3x. And so I have a lot more magnification on something like an LPVO. On my 300 Blackout, which is made only for really basically short distances, home defense type purposes, I just have a red dot basically. Something that's just 1x. I don't feel like I need magnification on that gun. So look into what your purpose is going to be and then decide what kind of optic setup you want. But don't cheap out on your optics. That's a big thing I've learned. You can do research and find optics that are decent for a low price. Like this has a Romeo 5 red dot on it from SIG. That is kind of the industry standard for a budget optic. It's like 120 bucks. Whereas this is also a 1-power optic and it's closer to 600 bucks. There are differences between a $100 and a $500 or $600 optic though. And you will figure that out if you stay in this hobby, this lifestyle long enough. Once you've got a sighting system, if you do have a very basic rifle, you're going to want to ditch these handguards if you feel like you're going to want the ability to be able to mount any kind of accessories. And you are going to want that ability. I think that every gun that you might have to use in a defensive situation should have a light on it. And you'll notice that all of my ARs do have lights on them. This one is a mod light. It's a very good light, but it's very expensive. I've got lights on all of these. If you do want to go with more of a budget offering, I do recommend the Streamlight ProTech HLX. For the price, it's a very good light. I've made mistakes, obviously, with some other lights. They still do work, so I'm going to run them until they don't. And then I'm going to replace them with better lights. And these are the mistakes that I'm talking about. But some of those mistakes, I've had to get rid of those parts. Well, I still have some of them, and I'm going to show you them. What you don't want to do, in my opinion, is use one of these like drop-in handguards, especially something like this that doesn't use M-LOK or Picatinny and has a totally proprietary way to mount accessories. I had a really hard time figuring out how to mount anything to this without adding Picatinny rail sections, in which case you might as well have a quad rail. The whole point of M-LOK, in my opinion, is so that you don't have to mount Picatinny rail sections. With this, to mount my light, I'm using an AirSocket inline mount. It gets it in nice and close to the rail, and it's very clean looking. I don't have any random rails that I'm adding to it. Same thing with my hand stop here. It mounts direct to M-LOK. So if you are going to change out your handguard, make sure you get M-LOK or Picatinny. You could still probably get key mod, although I don't really see those out there anymore. But make sure you get one that is an industry standard for mounting things. And the reason I say not to use one of these drop-in ones, you know, that's gonna fit between your upper receiver and your gas block, like this one is for a carbine length system, is then you mount a light on this and your light is all the way back here behind your gas block. You want your light up as far as possible on the rail so that you don't get any big shadow from, you know, your barrel, from the rest of your gun, especially if you end up running suppressed later. You want to be able to get that light nice and far out there. And if you get a good light, the light is going to be just fine with the muzzle blast. It won't do anything to it. Although on this gun, this light does get very dirty, so I have to clean it a lot. But that's also because of the kind of muzzle device that I chose for this, which again, if I were to do it again, and I'm going to, not the device that I would use. And we're going to get into that in a minute. Now, there are certain parts that I have found that I really like, that work well. And going forward, those are the parts I'm going to use on every build. And I've even used a lot of them on my older builds. Some of those things include the Radian Raptor charging handle. Now, Geissele makes a great charging handle. There are a few companies that make really good charging handles. Radian is my favorite, but don't make this mistake. When I first started changing out charging handles from like your basic mil spec, I got cheap knockoff Radian lookalikes, and there's a reason they're cheap. They all failed. The pins walked out, the latches broke. They're not the same as the real thing. You're gonna save money if you buy once, cry once, and spend the right money on the real product, rather than buying something cheap and then having to replace it with the real deal once the cheap one breaks. Speaking of things that I've found that work well for me that I now use on all of my guns, Radian Raptor charging handle, like I said, I really like the Radian Talon ambidextrous safety. You can set it to 45 or a 90-degree throw. I like the 45 because you could switch it on fire and then back to safe with it's just super easy. And it's smooth and it works well. And I like that. The other thing I've found is B5 system stocks. Now you can find there are other really good stocks. Magpul makes good stocks, but find one that you like. And then I have this same stock on 5 different ARs. It's on all 3 of the ones behind me. It's on my 9mm AR, and it's on my newest build because it's a good quality stock. It's comfortable. It gets a nice cheek weld, and it looks good. And looks do matter. And I know that if you're building out your AR, you understand that. You want it to look cool. You know, I tried lots of different things before because I thought they looked cool. This is what looks cool. Again, these are all only my opinions, but they are opinions that I've formed from trial and error. Another thing that you're going to want to probably switch out from a basic rifle is this A2 grip that a lot of them come with. I like a more vertical grip. That way it doesn't break your wrist when you're shouldering the gun, or especially when you're carrying it slung up, and we will talk about slings. A more vertical grip is just more comfortable. The Magpul K2 grip is really good. I really like this B5 Systems grip, but you'll notice that I've switched out almost all of my grips for much more vertical grips and grips that don't have this big finger groove. It's not the most comfortable thing in the world. Another thing that I have found that works really well for me, and is what I probably should have just gone with from the very beginning on all of my builds, are Geissele triggers. Now, LaRue also makes a very good 2-stage trigger that's cheaper than Geissele. It's around $100, I believe, the MB2S, I think. But Geissele triggers are absolutely fantastic, and I know that they look like they're expensive, but they're really not when you think of the grand scheme of things. A good trigger makes all the difference in the world when it comes to being able to shoot accurately and being able to shoot quickly. If your trigger is nice and light and crisp, there's much less of a chance that you're going to pull it off target when you press your trigger, and it's going to make you a better shooter. And so it's worth spending the money on a good trigger. And the other great thing about Geissele specifically is that around every holiday they go on sale. So you don't have to pay full price for one. Normally these triggers, this is an SDE. This 300 Blackout has the SSP in it. These triggers are $240 normally, but you can get them on sale for around $160, really around the week of any holiday all year long. So wait for a sale and pick up a Geissele trigger. It might be the best upgrade you make to your rifle. Now, I think the biggest lesson to learn is keep it simple, stupid. There's a reason that people say that. KISS, keep it simple, stupid. A lot of people, and myself included, I made all of these mistakes. So I'm definitely not trying to preach like I'm holier than thou by any means. The whole point of this video is to learn from my mistakes. A lot of people, because you can doesn't necessarily mean you should. And a lot of people take an AR-15 and they put all kinds of unnecessary stuff on it, cheap Chinese parts that don't do anything to improve their shooting experience, and really just get in the way and can cause you problems. And like I said, I have made those same mistakes. Some of them I still have on here. Like I've got the Strike Industries King comp on this gun. That comp does an incredible job of reducing recoil. And I've got the oppressor on it because that break, the blast from it, everybody shooting around me hated me. And so this oppressor gets rid of that. But in the future, all of my builds, and these ones too, are going to get different muzzle devices. They're all going to get something that can attach a suppressor. And it probably makes sense to get the same suppressor mounting system for all of your guns. That way you can use the same suppressor and quick detach it and put it on any gun. Right now I've got an OCL Polonium K coming for this. I could put the ASR QD on it to go with this flash hider. And I'm going to put ASR muzzle devices on all of my other 5.56 guns so that I can run the same suppressor on all of them. And so these muzzle devices that I spent money on are going to go in a drawer and never be used again once I have that suppressor and switch to actual suppressor mounts. But my big point in keep it simple, stupid is this. There's only a few things that you really need. Now, you do need a good handguard, whether your rifle comes with one or you decide to put one on. And if you do, don't use, like I said, one of these kind of drop-in ones that uses your the hardware that's already on the gun. Get an actual free-floated M-LOK or Picatinny, quad rail. I like M-LOK a lot, although my next build will be a Mark 18 with a quad rail. But get a free float one, low profile gas block, something that basically comes out to the end of your barrel so that you can mount your light far out on it, and get a quality one with a good lockup that won't twist or move, something that has anti-rotation abilities. That way, you never know, you might get into night vision later and you're going to want a laser aiming module on here and you want it to hold 0. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. Keep it simple, stupid. All you really need on your gun are a couple things. You need a light. I don't care what you think, you need a light. You have to be able to positively identify your target, and bad things happen at night. You need an optic. And yeah, a lot of people, they love iron sights, but you know what? There's a reason that we run optics these days. They are better. Get a good optic and get a sling. You got to be able to sling your rifle up so that you can use your hands if you need to. A sling is really important. You can see I've got slings, optics, and lights on all of these. I don't have a sling on my home defense 300 blackout, and there are reasons for that, but that's for another video. Optic, light, and sling is all you really need. So don't get all kinds of crazy other stuff on it. Now, you might find that you want some kind of hand stop or foregrip. I do like that a lot. I like to be able to pull the rifle into my shoulder. This Emissary Development handbrake here is fantastic. I also really like the BCM vertical foregrips, or almost vertical, and the Magpul vertical foregrips are great too. And for a while I did try these angled foregrips, and if they feel better to you, then go for it. If you're doing a pistol build, you can't legally put on a vertical foregrip. So in my opinion, that's really the only reason I would use something like this at this point. And you know what? To me, it's worth the $200 tax stamp to SBR and be able to use a stock and a vertical foregrip and set the gun up the way that I like. When it comes to keep it simple though, just don't be adding a bunch of crap you don't need. I remember when I didn't know any better, I put a laser on here, a visible laser. Why? You have a red dot. You look through that and it's like the same as looking at a laser, but you can zero it at distances that make more sense. And your possible enemy, target, whatever, bad guy, can't see what you're seeing through your optic. A visible laser doesn't make much sense, but a white light does. Now, if you are running nods, which I do plan to do at some point in the future, yeah, an IR laser, sure. Visible laser, no. Offset irons, I don't know, I wouldn't use those. I do have an offset red dot on this one, so that if I do have it set at higher magnification and then I need to engage an up-close target, instead of trying to turn down my magnification, I can just cant the gun over, and I've got a 1x optic, a red dot for very fast, up-close target acquisition. But even that isn't something that's absolutely necessary. There are a lot of things that people put on their ARs just because they think they look cool that are absolutely not necessary. Drum mags come to mind. I don't run drum mags on any of my guns. P-mags are great. I love the Gen 3, especially the window mags. They're super reliable. There's a reason the military uses them. And it's going to be quicker to do a mag change reload than it is to deal with a malfunction because your drum mag isn't, working. Don't get cheap Chinese knockoff optics, please. Ones that look like an ACOG, but they cost 50 bucks. It's not going to be as good as an ACOG. There's a reason that the real deal costs some money. You do get what you pay for to a huge degree when it comes to AR parts. This is my favorite AR I have, and it was also the one that cost the most. Now, do you need to spend $4,000 building out an AR? Absolutely not. You can definitely do it for a lot cheaper and still have a very effective gun. just do your research. Like I said, if you want a cheap optic that's going to work, the Romeo 5 is pretty decent from SIG. I've got it on 2 of my guns. I've had them for a long time. This one, actually the one on my AR9 originally was the first optic I had on this gun, and it still works great to this day. But that's about as cheap as you want to go. I wouldn't get cheap lights really. Probably as cheap as you want to go with that is like a Streamlight ProTac HLX. But a real light and a real optic, they are going to cost you some money. But really, the way you got to look at it is buy once, cry once. And it's worth spending that extra coin, because if you get the cheaper stuff, take it from me, from my own personal experience, when those things fail, then you're going to spend the money on the real thing, and you could have just saved that initial money that you spent on the cheap thing that broke. You will see that I have most of my ARs set up the same way. Now this one, I believe, is set up absolutely perfectly. Again, my own personal opinion. But they're all pretty much set up like this. Different optic setups for, different purposes, but they're all going to have optics, lights, slings. Those are the 3 main things you need, and they're all going to have full-length handguards. That way you can attach stuff if you want to. But you don't have to use every section of Picatinny or M-LOK that you have. Just use what you need. Honestly, I think the only real things that make sense to put on the front of your gun, unless you've got night vision or are running a laser aiming module, is a light, a switch for it. If you want to use a switch, you can use the clicky tail cap, and a foregrip of some kind if you want a foregrip. Other than that, you don't need to hang a bunch of crap off here. Those big broom handle with a light built into it, don't get those. Just Chinese lasers that cost 20 bucks, don't get those. You don't need all this crap. Don't put, I see people that put bipods on a gun with a red dot on it. That makes no sense. You're just putting extra weight and added things that can break on the end of your gun, the end that you don't want extra weight on. If you're going to be reaching out to longer distances and you have a gun with a barrel length of, 16 inches or more basically, and an optic that's magnified for those longer distances, then sure, you can run a bipod. But I would probably put it on a quick detach system, because you're not going to want to use it most of the time. So if you can learn anything from this video, keep it simple. Optic, light, sling, the furniture of your choice, a decent handguard, maybe some kind of hand stop or foregrip, and that's all you need. But just do the research and get quality stuff. Buy once, cry once, so you don't have to do what I did and have a giant bin full of parts that you're never going to use again because you thought they looked cool, and then you realize they suck and bought good parts later on to replace them. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a like. Share this with anyone that you think needs to figure out the right way to set up their rifles so that they don't do it the wrong way. And let me know down in the comments if you agree with me, or if you think that I'm totally off base here and that you've got a better way to do it. I love hearing all of your opinions. I answer every comment. I love interacting with you guys. Make sure you're subscribed. And from Sawtooth Tactical, stay strapped or get clapped.